I believe that the most important thing that you can do is learn how you uniquely need to move through your wounds, your traumas, your suffering to get to a point where you really love your life. Because every person that we meet on this planet who's figured out how to love their life gives us another reference point for that possibility. And creativity is the way in which I can look at the things that have made it hard for me to love life and reframe them and put new patterns around them so that I can view them differently, and that can help release the hold they have on me.
Yo, what's up everyone? And welcome to this very special episode of Stay Grounded with my dear friend, Mr. Adam Roa. So Adam is an entrepreneur, a creative, a poet, an actor, an influencer. He has so many titles. And one of the things I actually love most about Adam is how he allows himself to have all those titles. Adam is one of the most inspired human beings I know. I truly don't know another person who lives the way that he lives, where he just listens to the call of spirit and allows that to move his life, whether it's in where he's going to live or what project he's going to work on or what poem he's going to channel. I mean, it's such a divinely orchestrated life. And in this conversation, we talk a lot about his creative process and what he believes creativity is, and how we can all access more of our creative potential just by being more present to what's here and now. He has done so many different types of projects. I mean, one of his most famous projects was, or not project, but he created a poem called You Are Who You've Been Looking For, which went viral. It's one of the most watched poetry performances online with over 250 million views. And so he really does have a knack for, one, again, like putting in the consistent work to be a creative, but then also has, because he's so tapped into spirit and so tapped into divine orchestration, it's almost like he can access magic moments like those. And we talk a lot about that on this week's episode, how you can create more magic in your life, how you can create the space for more creativity in your life, how you can balance both the masculine aspect of doing with the creative aspect of being, and how both can come together to create the most fulfilling and nourishing experience of life that you could possibly have. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. We have all of Adam's links available in the show notes. And if anything we said on the episode resonated with you, tag us on social media, let us know. And I'm just so grateful that you're here getting to watch this conversation. So thank you again. And without further ado, here is my dear friend, Mr. Adam Roa. Enjoy. Adam, welcome.
What's up, Raj?
Dude, it's so good to be here with you.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm actually getting a moment with you in a place where you're like grounded. Like,
am I grounded? Do I feel grounded? I don't know.
Well, you're here. I was like shocked. You're like, I'm here for like 8 weeks.
That's the best projection I've ever received.
Well, I remember you telling me, I was like, Adam, you're like, how long are you here? Because I'm used to you being in like a week here, 2 weeks there, and like you're like, no, I'm actually grounded here, and I'm building here, and I'm like, it feels good, and it was like, whoa, because like, and we were just talking about this before, like you in my eyes truly do embody like that. The spirit of surrender. Like I've always loved that about you. Like actually, like I remember 2 years ago when we were at Danette's book, one of her book launch parties, and like you were just talking about how you feel the call and then you know when it's time to go, and you just packed up and you leave, and it's like the reason why you left is like apparent when you get there, and that the cultivation of that relationship to spirit is something that I deeply admire, and I know it's a big part of your message and how you create even. So I'd love to speak to that. Like, how have you cultivated that relationship to surrender and spirit, and how does that play into the way you create and the way you move through the world?
Well, for me, the real bottom line is that my life has continued to get better. When I just look at it from an eagle eye view, my life has continued to get better as I've continued to surrender. And when I look at all of the most magical things that have ever happened in my life, so a lot of people know the story of me being paid $1 million for coaching, and I have the most viral poetry performance in history. I have these things that are these crazy major milestones that changed my life, and none of them were planned by me.
Mm-hmm.
None of them were planned by me at all. And they all came on a path of listening and surrendering and leaning into what felt as if I was being guided to do. And somewhere along the way, something magical happened that was far outside the realms of what I could have ever predicted. And so that's a pattern. And I think that we live in an algorithmic universe. And so when you can find a pattern and you can lean into it, you now start to play with God. You start to play the game. You become we right now are dealing with the iOS system, the operating system of reality right now as I see you and I hear you, and that's one level of our senses in 3D. But underneath all of this is binary code. We have zeros and ones. We have circles and lines. We have masculine, feminine, alpha, omega, whatever you want to say to describe it. There is a binary that forms all the crystalline structure of existence. And therefore, it means that it's algorithmic, and anything that we think is entropy or chaos is just a algorithm too complex for our consciousness to comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
And so the patterns that we see help us code our reality really deeply. And one of those patterns is the more I surrender, the more I see magic happen. And I find that that surrender experiment is also a pathway where I have to face off with all of the parts of me that are in resistance to it.
I'm curious on that. It's actually a beautiful segue into how have you expanded your capacity to hold more of the algorithm? I'm curious.
Creativity.
Right. So
creativity is the answer. Yeah.
Well, and in that sense, like, because what's also beautiful about what I've observed and witnessed in your journey is how you're so good at composting. Like, you have a heartbreak, you have an experience, you have something that's over here. Like, you're so skilled at, or you've developed the skill maybe, or maybe that is a part of the surrender in like transforming or alchemizing the pain into art or whatever's in front of you into beauty. And I'm curious about how much that skill has played into your increasing capacity and how that has allowed you to experience more of life.
Well, I love that you see it as a skill. I see it as a necessity for survival. If I hadn't figured out how to do that, I probably would have killed myself. And I mean that very literally. The creative process, so let's just break that down for a moment. Creativity is the process of putting together patterns that you've never put together before. That is my definition of creativity. So if you're a painter, you're putting together patterns of colors and shapes that you've never put together before. If you're a poet, I'm putting together patterns of words that I've just never put together before. Musicians are putting together patterns of sounds and notes that they haven't put together before. And so that process of putting together new patterns is actually a skill. And it's synonymous to the expansion of consciousness, because your consciousness can be equated to the amount of patterns that you can see and recognize. And so when we say that we've just had our consciousness expand, what we're actually saying is we've just had some revelation that allows us to see more patterns in our life. Because, oh, that happened in our past, or that piece of information, or we just learned that thing. It's just allowing for more pattern recognition, right? And if this is all one complex algorithm, the more patterns that we can spot, the more that our consciousness is able to see, and that we are moving up this ladder of expanded consciousness in the direction of Christ consciousness, God consciousness, oneness, singularity, whatever it is, where all of this actually makes sense. And so creativity is where you practice the skill of pattern making and recognizing. And so when you do that very intentionally, you get better at it. And then suddenly now you're able to spot patterns more easily in life in completely unrelated ways, because that skill is there. And so creativity is a way that you get better at the process of expanding your own consciousness. And now I apply that to my pain and my hurt, because it is, in many ways, the pain and the hurt are some of the hardest ways that life teaches us lessons. But the lessons, the patterns, the algorithm that's underneath that brings with it the ability for us to have gratitude. Like when we can see, wow, this is how I'm growing. This is why that happened. This is why that wasn't a fit. This is why that relationship ended. I can see it. And I'm so grateful for those lessons. And I'm so grateful I had the opportunity. When we can do that, it unlocks something, because oftentimes when we're stuck in what we can't see, right? When we're stuck in the limited vantage point we have on a situation, we're stuck in the emotional loop of that vantage point.
Dude, I'm like really so many directions I want to go with this, but I have like, you just gave me such a cool reframe on like the meta structure of creativity, right? Like you took it like a layer above, which was actually the patterns of it all, being able to recognize the patterns, see the patterns, observe the patterns, create patterns, but it's like above everything. And it's ultimately with your consciousness. And that to me, like I've been really leaning into how like, I may do many things in this lifetime. I may have many roles, but ultimately the purpose, the real true purpose that I feel like I came here to experience was just to unravel into more of myself and to unravel into more expansion and more consciousness and more awareness, if anything. And all the things that I touch are just a means to get there. And so it's so fascinating and beautiful to hear how that structure is now like it's like you're localizing it towards the pain. How can you walk through like a process, if you would, of like, okay, let's say there's something, maybe you're in a situation or there's a challenging moment here. Like, how does the meta structure of that, like that framing of creativity being a way to unravel more of your consciousness, actually apply to something like, let's say, a relationship?
Mm-hmm. Well, 90 to 97% of your thoughts on any given day are thoughts you've had before. There's a very tiny fraction of thoughts that are new on a given day. And so most people are operating in that space where they're just on autopilot. Their unconscious belief systems are leading to a very similar emotional experience and similar thought patterns and similar actions over and over and over again. And that becomes habitualized so deeply, and most people don't even realize that they are NPCs. You know what I mean? They're just non-player characters where they are just Sims in a thing, unconsciously living out their lives. And the process of creativity is a way that we break that. And because, so for me, let's say I'm going through a breakup, right? And in this breakup, I'm going to have a similar thought pattern that is going every single day. It's just going every single day, and it's doing that thing. And there are some people who go through a breakup or a divorce, or someone dies, or they just have a traumatic experience that they never actually get over. They never move past it. It really just derails them for decades. And that's because they are caught in a loop of their emotions and thoughts that never shifts. And so the way in which that we can shift those thought patterns, there's a tremendous amount of them. Plant medicines could do it. Maybe just traditional talk therapy could do it. Maybe it's an experience like Burning Man, or something that just expands what they think is possible. Maybe it's they meet someone else and fall in love and that's the thing that shows them a reflection of what could be different. I don't know, but there's tons of ways. But there is one that's consistent and is free and is uniquely coded to you, which is your creative energy, your creative expression. And the process of looking at my breakup, but saying, I'm not just going to journal about it where I journal the same thing and I have the same thoughts, and I'm just going to talk about it where I repeat the same thing and the same thoughts. I'm going to turn it into poetry, which now forces me to look at that situation through a different lens, which physiologically forces me to look at it and fire new neurological pathways. So I am actually looking at my breakup, and even if I had the same thoughts, but I'm just trying to think of how to make it rhyme, I am forcing my brain to fire electrical signals differently. And that process, especially when you combine it with a process of knowing that you're turning it into beauty, there's something beautiful even about the most painful poem.
Totally.
And so when I know I'm taking my pain and I'm turning it into something beautiful and I'm forcing my brain to think in that way, I have now created new neural pathways when I view my breakup. And the more different pathways I have looking at a situation, the less habitualized I become in my emotional states and my thought patterns and whatever. And I eventually loosen the hold of what has been and I open up possibility for what can be.
Yeah, insight becomes the greatest healing tool.
The number of poems I write where they surprise me and I go, I had no idea that I felt that way or where that came from or that line was a gift from God. I've never thought of that before. That's beyond my pay grade. Like that happens all the time.
Yeah. And it's the cultivation of that opening. So like is the process of becoming an open channel for more insight something that's practiced every day? Is it amplified in those moments of crisis? Is it something that like you use it, you lose it, or if you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing? Like what is like I guess like if I had to think of this being something I can carry with me throughout my life, what does it look like in practice for me to actually put this in motion?
Yeah, if you are not utilizing your intuition and cultivating your intuition, that voice gets quiet.
Yeah.
It's much harder to tune into it. And I think very few people understand how much space creativity requires. And that's something that I battle with. And it's part of why I have the artistic entrepreneur program, is because there's this battle that happens inside of myself. And I know in so many people between the inner artist and the inner entrepreneur.
Amen, yeah.
And the entrepreneur is in an execution mindset. There's structure, there's systems, there's things that need to happen. There's a doing that happens. It's a very masculine energy. And then there's the inner artist, which needs the space to receive. Because have you ever seen the movies where someone's breaking into a high-tech bank vault or something, and it's like running this algorithm, and there's this bar that's going, letting you know how long until it cracks the code and you can get into the safe, which is funny because like somehow it knows how long it's going to take when really it's just running an algorithm. It should just kind of be random. Anyway, that's what's happening when we are trying to crack something creatively. When you have an entrepreneurial idea and you're going, okay, what could this be? How could we solve this problem? Your brain is running massive amounts of algorithms, patterns, trying to figure out the answer to that thing. And the more space you give it, it does the algorithm thing faster because you're not using up all the RAM of the computer on other things. But when you are trying to run all those patterns and algorithms, but you got 800 tabs open in your browser at the same time, and you are doing all these other processes and just doing, the space is gone for that process to happen. And so I think that people who really want to develop this surrender and this listening and this whatever need space.
I'm curious, this is something, I didn't even think I was going to ask this. It's cool. Let me tune into how I want to ask this. I feel like right now, even in my life, like I'm so go. And I recognize that there are patterns of mine that are pushing the go. There's a wiser part of me that says, be still, wait, listen, and the answer will come. And you'll know when the answer comes to strike and move. How do you balance both when you're inside of like pressure cooker environments or inside of environments that have external stimuluses that are asking you to move faster? Or like, where's the balance in some ways of like really valuing this piece? Because I know that things can happen overnight. I know that miracles can happen overnight. In fact, a big part of my journey as a spiritual entrepreneur has been letting go of the idea that I am doing anything, that I'm here just orchestrating and stewarding a consciousness that is much larger than me. And my role is to actually listen. But in some ways, like I get pulled back into the doing. and the way that I've done things in the past, because it's creating a result instead of waiting and being patient. So like, what would you say to someone like myself who's sort of dancing inside of both poles, who wants to be here, but almost feels like I'm at this, like, there's like this jump off point,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I'll tell you to take my program.
Perfect.
Check the link in the show notes. No, I think that one of the biggest misconceptions that the artists have and the inner artists have is that we create in a space of complete freedom, that you remove all of the limitations and the things and you just create just openly. And the word that most people describe on my Instagram, I asked, what does your inner artist really desire? And everyone's saying freedom, like freedom. And what's funny about that is that artists inherently need limitation. It's the way that it's designed. It's the structure. Because again, going back to the algorithm of reality, this reality can't be experienced without structure. Just even the fourth dimension of time is a necessity. We need space-time in order to experience this, and space-time is a limitation. And so when we talk about the musician's working with a certain amount of notes. There's a certain amount of frets on a guitar or keys on a piano. The painter has a certain size canvas, certain color spectrum to choose from. There is inherently a need for limitation in order for us to create a container for us to pour our creativity into. And so a big part of my program, The Artistic Entrepreneur, is helping people see that the inner entrepreneur creates the container for the artist to pour into. Mm-hmm. And so when we feel out of balance, it's because the doing that's happening is, I think we've overstayed our welcome inside of the entrepreneurial energetic. The entrepreneurial energetic is, what's the structure? What's the container? As an example, so if we're making a feature film, for the most part, a feature film needs to follow a 3-act structure and needs to be probably between 90 minutes to 120 minutes for the most part. That's just like pretty given, pretty standard. It doesn't have to, but good practice. And in a 3-act structure, there's things that you pretty much need to follow in terms of, rejecting the call, and then you have an all is lost moment later, and just like these different things that the reason why they work is because they're inherently reflecting our human life. That's why they work. And that's what we come to art for, is the reflection in the mirror of ourselves in the art. And so I think that when you tell a writer, hey, let's write a screenplay, the writer doesn't rage against the 3-act structure and rage against the idea that we should keep it between an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's just like, okay, how do we make the best freaking thing we can inside of this, right? And if we don't want to do it, then we're not making a feature film. We're making something else. And so in an entrepreneurial world, we're going, okay, how do we create the most fulfilling, artistic, creative, magical sales funnel? What is the lead magnet that we can create that really encapsulates the essence of magic that we have to offer? What is the way that we turn this webinar into something unique? It's not like the structure is, okay, the webinar has a certain structure to it and it has a goal. We want to sell something at the end or whatever. Great. Awesome. That's the container. But now what happens is people create the container and then they try and fill it with more entrepreneur. And they stay in the entrepreneur energy to fill that container. And that creates really a sense of burnout. It can be very unfulfilling because you're not actually allowing your inner artist, which is your inner feminine, to actually pour into the structure that your inner masculine has just created. And that pushes us out of balance. And if you just look around at what we have on the planet right now, and you'll see what happens when you're out of balance and you've really over prioritized the masculine energy and you've undervalued the feminine. We have a society that has gotten completely disconnected from the planet. We have a society that has just forced themselves into states of obesity and depression and suicide. Why? Because they are trying to force themselves to stay in the masculine energy of doing and not valuing enough of the just like sit and be for a moment.
Can you give me the opposite though? What if
The
somebody's
artist?
too much in their feminine, right? Like what dynamic does that create? Because I can feel that the dance that I've been finding is the doing and the being and going back and forth and knowing which season I'm in. And now I'm really learning to sort of integrate and bring both into harmony and understand that they don't need to be seasons. They don't need to be like, I was so off balance. I was too much in my masculine, so I needed to go all into my feminine to restore that. And now it's more about an integrated way of listening and doing. But I'm curious if you could even paint like, how does one know, maybe like the real question is, how do you know where you are in the spectrum from an honest lens? And how does one begin to catch themselves before they go too far off? Are there like yellow lights that you might kind of see on the spectrum for someone to know, okay, like I'm going a little too far into my feminine, I need to dial it back, or I'm going a little too far into my masculine, I need to dial it back? Curious if you have any like little guardrails.
Yeah, well, I think that to your first question around how do you know if you like, what's it look like to go way too far in the other direction? I think that one of them is just, are you achieving your goals? I think in some ways, and I get it. So when I first started sharing online, my first video I ever put out online was in 2013. So I've been in the game quite a long time. And I came from a filmmaking background. And so I wanted to create art and I wanted to share things that felt they were pure to the art. And so when I released stuff on Facebook, for example, I put no captions on them. I was like, fuck captions, man. Like, what are you talking about? Captions? I'm not putting captions. That just dumbs it down. People who are going to watch this are going to take the time to actually watch and listen. And then I wanted to put the cinematic black bars on the top and bottom of my videos. I didn't shoot anything vertically. I'm like, no way. It needs to be cinematic. And it was purely about the art, right? And what did that lead to? I shared for 5 years and never crossed 5,000 followers. 5 years I shared and never crossed 5,000 followers because I was unwilling to compromise what I thought was the pure expression of the art. But what's funny is when my poem went viral in 2018, right? For people listening, it's called "You Are Who You've Been Looking For." And when that was released, a version of it was released on Facebook. It got 40 million views in the first 48 hours. It's been viewed over 250 million times. It is the most viral poetry performance in history. And what's funny about that is that I created my version of it with the black bars and had a bit of an intro of me getting called on stage and like the lead up and whatever. And then I deliver this poem and it got 500,000 views. And I thought that was amazing. I had less than 5,000 followers. That's amazing. It's the best thing ever. Right? Then this company, Goalcast, reached out to me, said, hey, can we do a version? I said, sure, absolutely. They cut out the first minute of the poem and they made it vertical and they put captions on a lot of it and they put music and the things. But why did they cut out the first minute? They cut it out so it would start on a hook, which is buy this car, you'll get girls, buy this bra, you'll get guys. So they started on that line. So people are going, what? And it kind of takes it out of context a little bit. So that you don't know, and it creates that trigger. They knew how to play into the actual platform. And it went on to reach over 250 million people. Do you think I sit here and go, but they compromised my art. The integrity of the art is gone and I'm upset about it? Absolutely not. And I'm so happy that someone basically said, you're being stubborn, let us do it. And I got a chance to see how I was able to help so many more people by letting go of the part of me that thought it needed to be, it was like somehow out of integrity as an artist.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way. You said the word letting go, and I think that's something that, coming back to the idea of surrender, I think it's something that I've also just witnessed you kind of do really, like in that moment, you let go of the attachment to how something needed to look.
Mhm.
Like, can you speak to like the art of letting go and how one can get better at that? Because that comes back to the inner work and really having a relationship with yourself, maybe trust in God. But I'm curious to hear your perspectives around it.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch on the question that you asked me before, which is how do we know when we're out?
Great.
And that's just your emotions.
Mm,
How's it feel? There's a different feeling when we're just overdoing it.
hmm
And then there's a different feeling when we feel like we're not accomplishing something. And so your emotional state, for me, it's overwhelm and stress, and then depression. There's these deep things that let me know when I'm out of alignment.
Such a wisdom in those emotions.
Such a wisdom in those emotions. And I told you, this has been a really challenging week for me. I've been really struggling this week, and something's out of balance. And so to your next question of this art of letting go and this surrender, this is where your practices come into play. So yesterday, I think it was yesterday, just very practically, what did I do yesterday? I woke up, heavy energy, going through a lot. I meditated, journaled, did a rape ceremony. That showed me I had a lot of anger. So I did a probably 20-minute rage release practice, just going to town on a pillow, just slamming a pillow, screaming, crying, just letting it out. Then after that was done, I put my feet in the grass, my body in the sun, and stretched and moved my body and connected to my body in the space. Then I went to the gym and pushed some heavy weight. And like that was probably how I spent the first 3.5 hours of my day before I started working. And I think that a lot of times we want this conceptual answer for like, how do we let go or whatever. If there's a conceptual answer, it's listen. Listen to your body. What do you need in the moment? And can you create the space? And so am I sitting here right now feeling as if I'm in the best mood and the best energy and all of the things? No, absolutely not. I don't feel that. And I don't think there's anything wrong, but I'm in the process of letting go. I'm in the process of moving through whatever's alive for me. And what we are in consistently throughout our entire life is a process. You are a soul that has a body, not a body that has a soul. And so you have come here for something, some reason, and it's part of a process that your soul is in. And so the way that we might have a bad day, your life is a day for a soul, right? And so whatever this process is that I'm in right now, I can't see what is on the other side of it, but I can listen to what's needed in each and every moment. And that listening will tell me, okay, I have anger. So I created the space to listen. Then it showed me that I have anger. Great. How do I move that anger? And where people get messed up, I think sometimes it's they don't create the space to listen. Sometimes they listen and they find something out, but they don't know what to do about it. And then sometimes they just don't take the action for whatever reason. And so there's these different stages. And as long as you're willing to listen, then you know what to do and you're willing to do it, you'll be fine. And you can get support at each of those steps. If you are not creating the space to listen, like hire a therapist, just an hour a week where you have the space to just have that hour every week. Great. That's the way that you can get some help. Oh, you don't know what to do. Awesome. The therapist will tell you, or hire a coach or start listening to podcasts or whatever. It's like figure out what to do and you can Google it. Wow. You just realized that you have a bunch of unprocessed anger. You don't know what to do about that. What do you do with anger? Google it. When I was diagnosed with depression, I literally Googled it. How do you heal from depression? What do you do? And so then in that third stage, you don't want to do it. Okay. Do you need a mentor? Do you need a community that supports you? Do you need, I'm not a big pharmaceutical person, but like there is a time and a place where, great, you have absolutely no motivation. You are deeply depressed. You are suicidal. Maybe an SSRI is what you need to just get you to a place where you're motivated to take the action you just learned you needed to take. And then once you've started to take that action and you start to see that pay off, you won't need that extra boost anymore. I'm not sure what it is that you need specifically in that moment, but at every single stage of that, you can find support.
Yeah. And I guess the courage, and where does courage come into the equation here? Because I think that there's a piece of letting go that is a brave act. In many ways. You're letting go of part of you. You're letting go of an attachment to a timeline or an outcome. You're letting go of an idea. And so like, where does the cultivation of courage come in? Because that almost feels like something that happens maybe independent of those steps or maybe through the steps.
Well, I think a lot of people misunderstand courage. I think so many people feel that courage is not feeling fear, but you can't have courage if you don't feel fear.
Totally.
Courage is what you do in the face of fear. If you don't feel fear, it doesn't take any courage at all. The amount of fear I feel all the time, I feel fear all the time. I take a lot of big risks, and I live in a way that requires a lot of trust and surrender. And there's a lot of fear that comes up in that process. And so, that's interesting. Just I got hit with like this emotion all of a sudden as I just think about how hard that is sometimes. It requires a lot. And I think that the courage is cultivated through consistency. And again, when you do something courageous and you see the payoff, you have an easier time doing it the next time. And then you see the payoff, and then you do the next time, and you see the payoff. And so you will always have that fear many times before, and it's always seems like life seems to be getting better and better. Everything seems to be improving if I just look on a graph. Sure, it's an up and down, but the trend is up. And as long as I continue to keep myself aware of that, then when it feels down, I can go, you know what, my down now versus my down 10 years ago is so different. And that's an important perspective to remember.
And just to that, I'm curious if there's a role that gratitude plays in the creative process for you and how that comes in. Because I mean, ultimately that journey of looking back and seeing how far you've come as a way to keep yourself grounded so that you can maybe listen and stay patient in the listening when you just want to act. It's like, there almost feels like these principles play together inside of a creative process.
Yeah, I feel I just think that inside of the evolutionary process that we're in, I think that we grow through resistance. You could even just argue, like, every plant on the planet is growing through the resistance of gravity. We are growing through the resistance of gravity. That's resistance. How do you get stronger at a gym? You lift weights. For some reason, we can go to the gym and go, yeah, this is supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard to get stronger. We have to lift weight that on rep 6, 7, 8, it's really hard. And you do that, and then you get stronger, and suddenly 100 pounds, you can do 200 pounds after a few months, and you go, wow, I've gotten so much stronger. But guess what? Are you lifting 100 pounds anymore? No, you're lifting 200, and it's hard. And that's how I continue to get stronger. And then we look at the rest of our life and we want no difficulties. But it's hard. Life inherently has a lot of hard in it.
Yeah.
And I think that resistance is how we grow, but suffering is a choice. And so I am working really hard to embrace the resistance and not turn it into suffering and separate those two things. And the creative process for me is an escape. This creative process for me is the pathway through. It's a way that I can process this part of me that, the saying, our mess becomes our message.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe you know this about me. I was molested when I was 5, and it was a repressed memory till I was 30. So for 25 years, there was something underneath the surface that was dictating a lot of my emotions and my thoughts that I could not see. And that created a lot of neurological pathways of beliefs around something being wrong with me, and something was off, and something's not quite right, and I don't belong here, and like I'm not safe in my own body. There was a lot that got created over 25 years. And all of those belief systems made it really hard for me to love my life. It made it very difficult for me to want to be here. And so my message now is about helping people fall in love with their life. I have a poem called Heaven. It's on my YouTube. And the first line is, the most impactful thing you can do for the world is learn how to love life. And we were talking about Danette's thing. I wrote it for Danette's book launch, actually. That's the first time I ever performed it, our friend Danette May. And I really believe that. I believe that the most important thing that you can do is learn how you uniquely need to move through your wounds, your traumas, your suffering to get to a point where you really love your life. Because every person that we meet on this planet who's figured out how to love their life gives us another reference point for that possibility. And creativity is the way in which like I shared earlier in this podcast, can look at the things that have made it hard for me to love life and reframe them and put new patterns around them so that I can view them differently, and that can help release the hold they have on me.
I just want to speak to like the brave choice it makes to choose that. Like it's like a brave choice to want to see the beauty in life, and a brave choice to want to channel creativity into pain and to transform it into pleasure. And like it's a brave choice to be dealt with uncertainty and fear and insecurity, and to lean in to any level of a process to rise above it. It's a brave choice to love yourself in the way that you are, Adam.
Mm.
And I really just want to like reflect that to you, because I think it's one of the most inspiring things about you is how deeply I've consistently seen you just be there for yourself and lean into your process as a way to inspire others to be there for themselves. I still remember that poem. It was like in fact, we met, I believe, 1 or 2 months before the poem went viral. It was in 2018. We were in Brooklyn at Jeanette's first book launch.
The first book launch in New York.
In New York.
Yeah.
It was right before we had just met, and to witness you and your embodiment of this, and I appreciate how much, again, even being able to show up with the bravery to be inside of a process and to be open in that process and to be expressed in that process is fucking beautiful, dude.
Thanks, man. I just feel like I made the reality show, The Art of Choosing Love.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And which is also on YouTube for anyone who wants to see it. I made a reality show for a year after my 10-year relationship ended. And imagine me spending most of my life feeling something off in me, not being able to see it, and therefore telling the story that something's inherently wrong with me, right? The most healing thing I could do was basically rip open my rib cage, show my insides to the world, in the most vulnerable, raw, real way I possibly could and say, sort of like Eminem in 8 Mile, like, this is me. What else do you have? I can't be a bad person. This is me. I'm showing you everything. And it was to have, I ask people this question sometimes. I go, if you had a camera on you 24/7, people following you around, filming everything as you're going through some of the hardest times in your life, like a breakup, would you be proud of what the world saw? To like actually, not conceptually, truly, because I think most people, they would, have their moments where, yeah, I've been drinking way too much. I've been eating poorly. I've been having sex as a way of, avoiding. And I just binge watch Netflix instead of working towards my goals. I'm pretending to be something on social media that I'm not actually being. And I think that's most people. And so for me, I just needed to go through the process of showing everything. And I told my camera crew, the more awkward, the more painful, the more sad, the more whatever, put a camera on it. I will never tell you not to film. We might not put it out to the world, but I will never tell you not to film. And that was necessary for me in many ways to realize there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of who I am and how hard I work to be the man that I am. And that doesn't change the fact that, like, I'm sitting here right now emotional because I've just had quite the week, man. And, but what I've learned over the years is vulnerability is the gateway to connection. And I'm not here to tell people I have any answers. I don't have any answers for anybody. I have something that works for me. And I have managed to create a life where I've made millions of dollars and I've reached hundreds of millions of people, and I get opportunities to speak on all these stages. I have the freedom to go anywhere, do anything. I wake up every day and all I create is what I decide to create. Like, that level of life that I've created for myself has not been given to me. It is not how I grew up. It is not a accident. I intentionally have been able to build that. And it may not be the pathway for everyone, but people who, if I let myself be seen super authentically and super vulnerably, and there are people who see that and go, I see myself in him, there's a resonance of some kind that I feel deep in my soul, then they know that the path that I've walked will work for them too. And so instead of trying to convince people to get into my funnel or to whatever, it's like, yo, this is me. If you resonate with me, I promise you that everything that I put out is something I've experienced. It's something true. It's something that's worked for me or hasn't worked for me. This is what I believe, and I'm just sharing it. Take it or leave it. And if you're going to leave it, amazing. Go find someone else. There's a path for you. And for the rest of you who are resonating, like, there's people resonating with this conversation, amazing. Stop following a bunch of other people. Listen more deeply to what I have to say. Go into my podcast, go into my YouTube video. I don't say that from a place of arrogance. I'm saying that so many people think that change happens when they hit like on a motivational meme from one of the 500 Instagram life coaches that they follow. And they think that somehow that dopamine hit of like, oh, that feels good, means that they've changed. You haven't changed shit. You would be better off unfollowing everyone and following 10 people you deeply resonate with and actually applying the wisdom that is being transmitted to you. And so I have a lot of compassion and empathy for the struggles that people have. I tend to, my mess becoming my message is that I've struggled to love life. And yet how I've gotten here is daily practices and work and just being in a commitment to something. And if you're willing to do that work, then you can have that too.
Fuck yeah, dude. Like, I'm just like, I loved how actually it was just really beautiful to like just witness you kind of be in the vulnerability and then begin to channel like direct guidance and direct truth. And that was like a transmission in some ways. And I just really appreciate the range that you are. Like you bring so much range to a conversation. And I think that is because you've allowed yourself to be seen and you've removed all the barriers that stop you from claiming all the different aspects of yourself. And it's so powerful to allow so much death, so much ego death, so many parts of you to be seen. And it's like, all right, I'm all of this. I am the person that can feel this and be in this. I'm the poet. I'm the entrepreneur. I'm the coach. I'm the teacher. I'm the traveler. I'm the father, soon to be, in many ways.
I was like, soon to be. Where's happening?
Yeah, but in many ways. Like, I mean, like I know you.
Yeah, I'm calling that chapter in. I was like, really? Do I have a baby that I don't know about? Bro, what are you hiding from me?
What prayer did you just
like?
Set,
what just happened?
No, but I'm appreciating coming back to just the way you live your life. And what I've admired about the way you live your life is that the way that you've surrendered through life has allowed for so much of that creativity to actually create your life. Like it's like, yes, you created it, and there's a benevolence around you because of the choices you've made. And I think it's so fucking rad, man. And it's such an inspiring reminder for all of us to lean into those uncomfortable moments and to surrender and to allow ourselves to be seen and to transmute that compost into something so much beautiful. So I appreciate you, and I admire you. I look up to you, and I'm just grateful that we're friends, and I got a chance to drop in with you while you're in Boulder for more than a week.
Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate those kind words, and likewise, I could say so much about you and what you're doing. And I remember when I was in Miami, and we had the conversation about what you're creating, and just it means a lot to have brothers in my life that are doing big things that I can be inspired by and inspire. Like what else are we here to do?
Totally, brother. Totally. Yeah. So talk a bit about some of the programs that you have coming up and your podcast. I want to make sure that anybody who heard the channel and was like, Adam's one of 10 people I just need to go follow right now. Like, how do they just get immersed in your world?
Yeah. So I host the Creative Path podcast. So just search The Creative Path with Adam Roa. And it's me talking to people that I find inspiring about creativity, about what is their creative process? How do they relate to creativity? How do they bring creativity into their business that they've just created? How do they optimize their creative flow? I think creativity is something that everyone should really cultivate and tap into. So where are the places we can go to learn about how the best of the best are utilizing theirs? And so that's what the Creative Path podcast is. And my current focus right now is the artistic entrepreneur and this movement that I'm starting for helping people who have the heart of an artist and the mind of an entrepreneur. And how do we go from good to great? The people that I want in that program are where I was 10 years ago, where I just felt greatness in me. I felt the potential of greatness, man. I felt it so deep, and I knew I was good, and I knew I could be great. And it just felt as if my reality around me wasn't reflecting it. I wasn't making the money. I wasn't getting the opportunities. No, I wasn't getting social media following. And so nothing around me was reflecting the greatness that I felt within myself. And that was such a painful experience. And I think that greatness is reflected. And so you can think you're great, but you don't actually know until life reflects it back to you. And that goes against this whole participation trophy culture, woo-woo, new age, like you're amazing and great and divine as you are. Yes, and you might think you're the best basketball player on the planet, and if all you've done is shoot hoops in your driveway, you have no idea until you go and get in the game. You have no idea what greatness looks like until you're in the game and you get a chance to see it. And so there's an aspect of needing to put yourself out there. And so for people who feel the potential of greatness and want the opportunities to really put themselves out there more and do it in a way that blends the inner artist with the inner entrepreneur so that you build something that works and makes you money and provides value to people and at the same time is fulfilling and is actually enabling this process of creative expression in yourself that I think is inherently why we're here. We are creative beings because we are an expression of the creator. We are a part of creation. We are here to expand, grow, and create. And so those people who feel that call and have that heart of the artist and have the mind of an entrepreneur and want to make a big impact, that's who this program's for. And that's why I'm keeping it super small. So that I can really go in with these people. I want to create like a league of superheroes, man.
Well, I know one of those superheroes in there, and she's pretty rad. So I'm excited for this birthing. Feels like a beautiful culmination of all your life's work coming into one cohesive movement, man. It really feels like some of these, the concept of creativity and the way you create. Like I said, I don't know many people that live the creative path in the way that you do. So I'm grateful again that we are connected. And so to find all this information, head to your Instagram. Is that the best way?
Yeah, Instagram. In the link in the bio of my Instagram is a good spot. My website is adamroa.com, but it's outdated, so just be warned ahead of time.
Dude, I was gonna say I was having a conversation with my team, and like I went back to my website, and it was like built in like 2020.
Yeah, I don't know. Is anyone using websites anymore? Do we use websites? I just tell people just go to my Instagram.
I was at a speaking event last November, and like the person who was like emceeing went to my website and pulled all the things to announce me, and I was like, oh, we need to like hack it all. Like it's not, none of it's like I can't feel it. I was like, hey, just come over here. Let me just give you something new.
My new podcast is not even listed on my website right now. It's one of those things. So and I have a YouTube channel that we have now. We put out 2 videos. We put out the podcast, but we also put out a long form video where I'm teaching some of this artistic entrepreneurship and things like, for example, how to scale from one-on-one to one-to-many, like actual videos about that, where I can really help people, because I love Instagram. It's been really good to me. And the depth is only available with kind of longer form content. So if people want more of that, there's a lot on YouTube.
Excellent, man. Well, we'll make all of those available in the show notes, but Adam, got one last question for you.
Uh-oh.
In the midst of everything you're doing, everywhere you've been and everywhere you're going, what's one thing you do every single day to become a more grounded human being?
Pray. I pray every day. Yeah. At my altar. So I think that it's important to remember that we're not alone. And as someone who travels as much as I do by myself, as much as I do staying in Airbnbs or hotels or whatever, as much as I do by myself, knowing that spirit is always with me, that my guardian angels are always on my side, is sometimes the only thing that gets me through some of those really hard days. And so, prayer, something I do every day.
Thank you, guardian angels, for holding us as we move through all of the weaves of life.
Yeah. And my angels have really big wings. So if any of you listening need them, just ask. They know. They'll give you a great big hug, hold you too.
Oh, brother, thank you so much for being here. And everybody, that's a wrap for this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I'm your host, Raj. It's your new friend, Adam. And from us, stay grounded. We'll chat soon.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Stay Grounded. No matter where you're from or what you're going through, I hope it helps you remember just how incredible you are and have always been. If you're on a path of emotional healing or self-discovery and would like to learn how Liberate can support your journey, head to www.rajjana.com/liberate. That is LIBER8 to learn more about our current group programs and one-on-one offerings. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.